Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. It is Tuesday, but it is the first Tuesday after a holiday, so it's basically Monday. So let's cover just another Mimic Monday right now with a bit of a timey-wimey Mimic. Every Just Another Mimic Monday, what I do is I reach deep into that box of teeth and I pull out a Mimic for Dungeons & Dragons that's homebrewed for all of you. Now, usually I do this on a Monday, but this Monday was a holiday that I had off, and I just have decided on those holidays I'm really going to focus on my friends and my family, so they get the time with me that they deserve as opposed to always worrying about being on, as it were. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into the Grandfather Mimic. The first Grandfather Mimic doesn't recall the exact moment it realized time was just as malleable as its own form. This is mostly because at that point in time, time ceased to exist for the monstrosity altogether. Its primitive mind expanded, and it learned how to play with time to suit its own ends. Some think this drove the Mimic mad. In fact, all its descendants are quite chaotic. Some strive to make the world around them better, others to sate their own hungers, and the last to tear it all down. They are all well armed for this, with the ability to at least temporarily age foes and even step out of time for a few ticks. At least one works out of a detective's house, aiding the investigator hiddenly when they can't piece a puzzle together. Alright, that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the Grandfather Mimic statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A Grandfather Mimic is a challenge rating 6 medium monstrosity that is often chaotic. They don't have a great armor class, but they have a pretty good amount of hit points for their challenge rating. They do have a plethora of skills because they are smarter than your average Mimic with an intelligence of 14 and a wisdom of 16. They do have Shape Changer, Adhesive, False Appearance, and Grappler, but they can only change into a Grandfather Clock. They do have multi-attack, where they can make 2 pseudopod attacks, and of course they have a bite attack, but you're really here for the juicy, timey-wimey stuff. First off, they have Mimic Time, which works very similarly to a Ghost's aging effect. Instead of frightening a creature, it does temporarily age them, so they're on the effects of the slow spell. If they fail that save by 5 or more, however, they are aged 1d4 times 10 years, which can only be, reversed with a greater restoration spell or a like effect. Lastly, they have Between Moments, which is basically time stop with a couple of different caveats. One, it doesn't have a random number of turns. They just get 3 turns every single time. And on top of that, normally time stop cannot affect creatures or objects other than yourself if those objects are held by another creature or time stop ends. In this case, they can still affect creatures and objects held by other creatures as long as they are grappling said creatures, because again, they're a Mimic and they pull them into the same weird time issue that the Mimic is having. Now, this could be quite an interesting creature for you to use, either as a villain or a protagonist, an ally that comes up in a story, depending on what kind of story that you want to tell. Obviously, this has a little bit of influence from Doctor Who sort of stuff, and likewise, because we're doing this on a different day, I wanted something that had a little bit of a time idea to it, and my wife suggested that this might be a good one to do. So here we are. How would you use it in your own campaign? Of course, you can find the Grandfather Mimic, hundreds of other Mimics, and hundreds more horror-based creatures for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that are all perfectly free at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you're more interested in the horror projects that I have that are not D&D related, or the horror fiction that I write that includes grease paint right there, you can always go to www.zacharyoshea.com. I really appreciate your time and your attention today, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.